Hello and welcome to Halcyon, where this episode you're greeted by a host who's struggling to contain his inner fanboy. This week I'm going to be talking about a game series that's very near and dear to me. Mass Effect was a game that I picked up a few months after its initial release in 2007, but nevertheless, once I picked it up, I became instantly hooked. This game left a profound and long-lasting effect on me. Right off the bat, and considering the intro to this video, I think it's important you know I am a massive fan of this series. I love the Mass Effect trilogy. It's one of my favourite sci-fi trilogies, sci-fi series to date, which is controversial considering that I'm a massive Star Wars fan. No game before or since has invoked the wide variety of emotions, the sense of accomplishment, the sense of loss, the immersion factor that this game, I feel, deals in spades. From adulation, despair, joy, sadness, laughter, and most importantly, wonder. This game takes you on a journey that will provoke more than I thought a game ever could. It was the first series I pre-ordered, the first series I dedicated a day off work to complete, and the first series I played through before the next installment was released to ensure I was fully engrossed in the world that it presented to me. Lauded by critics and players alike, it made huge strides forward in terms of its design, its story, its writing, and it's an amalgamation of the action and RPG series, which made it even more interesting to play if you were a novice, because you could just switch up the action, and more engrossing if you were more technically minded and interesting in the mythos and the philosophies that the game was trying to push to you. And as a result, the series has been remembered fondly by its fans. However, after playing the third game's ending, I was left with an immensely bad taste in my mouth, to the point where I never had the motivation or desire to pick it up again. Bearing in mind this is a game that was designed from the ground up to be something that you replayed over and over again, I would say this was a pretty big flaw. However, considering the recent release of the E3 trailer to the Andromeda, which is the fourth installment in the series which will take place several hundred years after this trilogy, I wanted to try and explain what it is that this series has that makes its fans so impassioned, and why that same reason made their fans so bitterly disappointed with the series' conclusion, and why this new trailer may give us hope. So therefore, I put to you my review of the Mass Effect trilogy. And again, just to reiterate exactly how bad I am with this game, I'm the kind of silly son of a bitch that legitimately sheds tears for my teammates when they die. Oh, Morden, you crazy Solarian bastard. Anyway, to the review. So in the first section, let's get the basics out of the way, and let me talk about the gameplay that the game has to offer. The Mass Effect series took much of its design from the Knights of the Old Republic, in the sense that choice is what this game is based around. Both developed by Bioware, players of the original Knights of the Old Republic will feel an instant familiarity with the game. Only here, the conversation systems, character responses and choices have been developed on greatly. You as the player decide the fate of the game. You do this by guiding your fully customizable character through a tapestry of stories, situations and dilemmas. You'll be asked to decide the fate of individuals, societies and the galaxy itself. You'll be encouraged to delve deeper into the world, with side quests and NPCs enticing you to stop and listen, and you'll be confronted by choices that will not only have you debating for moments at a time, because your choices will have lasting ramifications throughout the rest of the series. So basically, it boils down to something like this. Save one person, sacrifice another. Save one species, doom another to extinction. Be a paragon for the galaxy, or reign in its utter annihilation. The choice is yours. Become a paragon, stand for truth, justice, and never leaving anyone behind. Or become a renegade. Put the collective good above everything else. Strive for being the biggest badass you can. Wear cool leather jackets. The choice is yours. These choices are yours to make. These are the foundation of the game. The way it weaves seemingly innocent and benign choices together into the narrative that then form the world that you populate is something that is one of the biggest selling points of the game. You'll notice things during your playthrough that perhaps other people have never seen before, because you made a very teeny tiny choice that they omitted or didn't even pay any attention to. It's one of the game's biggest strengths, and it's one of the reasons why a lot of people are encouraged to play it through again and again and again, from different perspectives to even taking different paths to the first ways that they tried. Combat in the series has changed from iteration to iteration. In Mass Effect, the game originally had a very loose and simple shooting mechanic with no cover-based system or reload. Instead opting for a cooldown system, it was more frustrating than interesting at first. But as the game progressed and better, more powerful guns became available, it soon became a non-issue since the guns would never overheat, meaning that for the most part the combat was functional, if unremarkable. The same went for exploration, with the travel between worlds and the usage of the planetside Mako again having potential but feeling somehow basic and underutilized, with the worlds themselves feeling slightly repetitive and isolated, with the occasional Thresher attack and base to clear as the main distractions. The game also utilizes a very interesting freeze frame mechanic, whereby you can pause the action in its place, bringing up a HUD menu that will allow you to select from various things like swapping between weapons mid-combat, giving instructions to your squad mates, or initiating certain actions such as biotic moves, or if you have a tech with you, some kind of sentry weapon. It's a very interesting way of being able to break up the combat sections and makes it very easy to direct your team in a way that suits you, being able to outflank more powerful enemies, or bottleneck numerous enemies who are threatened to overwhelm your position. Add to this that there are different class options for the way you start your game, which will allow you to perform actions and abilities that other classes can't. My preference being soldier. I like to bulldoze the shit through everything that I play, and there are more fun ways, but to me there's nothing more satisfying than rocking up and just being able to gun down fools at my leisure. However, in both the second and third installments in the series, the combat became much more engaging, with varying enemy types, weapon types, armor customization, boss battles, and a new cover-based system akin to the Gears of War series. The cooldown mechanic was replaced with a clip system where every weapon barring heavy weapons would utilise these as a means of ammunition. More abilities in the game were introduced into combat, with each class feeling much more unique than in the first game, and the Mako being omitted entirely. The way you explored the galaxy was improved, with you taking control of a miniaturised galaxy map in the SSV Normandy directly, with the planets themselves functioning as resource pads, or indeed as the bases for missions, having much more focused and linear progression through them. They acted as a very interesting, if rudimental, distraction on this occasion, with set pieces such as the leaning ship off of the cliff being a source of tense, if not reluctant fun, considering when you realised the ship was never falling off the cliff, but on the first playthrough it was certainly interesting as hell. These additions help make the game feel more action-packed and fast-paced, but they also help make the game feel more populated, with less of that isolated mechanic of feeling like you've progressed past a section, therefore you have no reason to turn around and go back. It's also helped make more of the game feel accessible, with more of the combat set pieces feeling way more intense and impressive. And now, more than just an addition to the game, exploration is actively encouraged, with more of the game yielding success, reward, and more to the point, intriguing aspects of the story that perhaps you would have missed had you not gone to that planet, or taken on this additional mission, or indeed spoken to this crew member who's been nagging you to talk to her since you came on the ship. And as a result, more of your actions feel rewarding. You feel like you're progressing, and that every action you have has a meaningful impact on the world, which in turn makes you feel important, which is what a game like this should do. Add to this each game's climax becoming more grand, epic, with scales raised to preposterous proportions of saving the galaxy from annihilation, the human race in threat, and even the extinction of every living thing in the galaxy hanging in the balance. You feel like you are at the precipice of all of this action, and you and only you have the ability to stop it. It's an immensely satisfying feeling, and it's also a feeling of weighing heavily on you. You feel the weight of the decisions that you're putting forward to people. You really feel like the galaxy hangs in the balance, and you cannot give the game enough credit for this. But this leads us into the next section that's maybe just as important if less obvious than the first. The graphics, sound, and character design. The Mass Effect series has always been consistent in its high quality of design with its levels, its graphics, the sound design and the soundtrack, and also a number of other issues that relate to its in-game mechanics being as polished, albeit basic as they are. The only main gripe throughout the series that I have is the ridiculously long proportions of its human cast members. People's arms seem to drop from their shoulder all the way down past their knees. It's somewhat disconcerting in some scenes to see it. In addition, when people smile, it'll probably creep you out, and if it doesn't, you're the kind of person that pulls this smile and thinks it's attractive. Nevertheless, the qualities that Bioware put into the sound, the visuals, and the overall design of this world leave you feeling entranced. It's an immensely well-crafted and beautiful experience to boot. They all help to contribute, making a very captivating set piece for its audience, and it allows them to fully engross themselves in a world where the story adds yet more intrigue and mystery, which is further helped by these points. The combat levels consist of A to B affairs with various extras and occasional perks, such as new weapons, additional credits and upgrades. They occasionally contain points and people of interest that serve to break up the level with conversations with people on the battlefield who are comprised of both enemies and bystanders alike. They feel intricate enough to warrant exploration, but never too much that you lose sight of the main objective of the mission. The neutral levels, such as your command ships, the SSV Normandy SR-1 and 2, are beautifully designed, with multiple levels to the ship to navigate, multiple functions such as the armory to prep for missions, the galaxy map to navigate throughout the universe, your personal quarters that add a sense of customization with things like fish, comic books, collectible items, music, things that make the ship feel like your own. The living workstations for both the NPCs and team members you recruit help add a sense of scale and diversity to the ship as you explore and seek out new conversations as the game progresses. The Citadel is another example of how the game creates levels and atmospheres that have plenty of detail, feel vibrant and alive, and have ambient noises and conversations in between NPCs that make you feel like you really are a passerby rather than that they perk up because you're around. It's one of those unique experiences that leads to you thinking that you are in an interactive and very encouraging environment. There always seems to be something going on for you to do. Fun little conversations between NPCs that you can within earshot that you can pick up on and elaborate on may lead to missions and side missions that add to the main campaign of the game. It's a very interesting thing to walk past a cantina of people, listen to a particularly benign conversation, which leads you on a mission to a ghost base that means that you have to take on a squadron of elite troopers. It's peculiar in its own right, but it can't be argued that it keeps you on edge listening out for little tidbits every now and then. In terms of its level design, it can't be argued that the suicide mission in particular, its set piece and the way that the whole game has led up to this one seemingly impossible mission, and any number of things that you've prepared for at this point could go wrong and lead to the death permanent of a squad member, adds to this sense of urgency, this sense of preparing for an inevitable end that you must fight against all the odds in order to circumvent. Something else that's very impressive with the game is the fact that there are very few pre-rendered cutscenes that don't use the game's in-game engine. In fact, so much so that when you see a pre-rendered cutscene that looks as polished and as good as it does, it kind of seems out of place. But it does give me hope for a Mass Effect film one day, considering how epic it looks. The soundtrack to these games are without a doubt the best I've ever heard. Skyrim runs them close, but where I would argue Skyrim is inferior is due to the fact that while extremely beautiful, it doesn't have the same emotional nuance or variety that Mass Effect does. The sadness and the feeling of loss in the game is complemented beautifully by the soundtrack. while others are matched only by the jubilation of feeling the success that others invoke. While the series design is flawed or lacking in certain areas, however, most prominently in the first and third games, with examples being the lack of luster and shooting mechanics in the first game, feeling more like an elongated turret section with the occasional boss battle with effectively a shoot it till it dies mechanic, and the perplexing choice to remove the option to speak with NPCs in the third game when accumulating side quests. So you were never able to understand exactly where you'd accumulated the mission from if you managed to complete it, there meaning you couldn't go back to the person to collect your reward. Plus, the omission to have a system to help track and locate objectives as a whole for side quests can be infuriating when trying to pick and pursue an objective. However, these are very small complaints when considering the scope and detail taken to ensure that the game is as immersive as is humanly possible. But behind the gameplay, the graphics, the presentation, is the reason that I love this franchise so much. The characters within its world. The way that they all feel fleshed out, the way they all feel important, and they all feel diverse. Added to this a story that continues to build, it continues to put you at the focal point, and is always satisfying in the way that it executes its mystery element. Something that's very tricky to do, pulling back the curtain and leaving people with a sense of satisfaction, is something that, again, I can't applaud the game enough for. However, this leads me to a very tricky subject for people like me, who genuinely form bonds with these characters, which may sound weird, but the next time you're watching Walking Dead, and you think back to when you thought Glenn was dead and how pissed off you were he wasn't, then tell me I'm weird. In any event, the characters in this world are what you strive to keep them, you strive to protect them, you strive to enhance them, and to get to know them. And I'd like to give you two different examples of varying degrees of feeling depending on character development. The first of which would be everyone's favourite crazy-ass Solarian scientist, Morden. Oh, and consider this your spoiler warning for the rest of the video, because you can't talk about the goddamn characters or the story without getting elated or pissed off and revealing a few chestnuts along the way. Now, if I may, allow me to try and engross you. Imagine for a moment that you've spent hours, countless hours, investing your time and energies into learning about an individual. Let's assume that he's a crazy-ass Solarian scientist with bars.
I'm sorry, I know that was important, but you perform Gilbert and Sullivan?
I am the very model of a scientist Solarian. I've studied species Turian, Asari, and Batarian. I'm quite good at genetics as a subset of biology because I am an expert, which I know is a tautology. My xenoscience studies range from urban to agrarian. I am the very model of a scientist Solarian.
Now let's say, for the sake of argument, you've grown a bond with him. You've been through missions after missions after missions with this guy. You've even gone to the extent of helping him with his own personal vendetta that he needed to solve. You guys are inseparable. You've built up a real bond and a sense of kinship. And then this happens.
Down! Control room at top of Shroud Tower. Must take elevator up.
Morton, this whole thing is coming apart. There's got to be another way.
Remote bypass impossible. STG countermeasures in place. No time to adjust cure for temperature variance. No other option. Not coming back. Suggest you get clear. Explosion's likely to be problematic.
Morton, no!
Shepard, please. Need to do this. My project, my work, my cure. My responsibility. Would have liked to see how it ends. I'm sure you'll do fine without me.
I'm sorry.
I'm not. Had to be me. Someone else might have gotten it wrong. I studied species Turian, Asari, and Batarian.
Temperature now within acceptable range.
My xenoscience studies range from urban to agrarian. I am the very model of...
Now, I think it's important to preface that there's not a goddamn thing I could do about that. He was going up in that elevator no matter what I said, no matter what I did, and how much I wanted him to realise that there was no point. And yet I came to the cold realisation that Morden, my Solarian beatbox do, was dead. I shed a tear for that poor bastard. I can't say I didn't. But the point is that he was as impressive a character as you could ever possibly hope to achieve in a video game, considering that A, he was an alien, B, he spoke faster than me, and C, well, he came out pretty boring to begin with. Badass scientist. What's there to like? But as you learn his sense of humour, his dry wit, and his impressively complex moral compass, you've got to love the guy. And are equally devastated when he willingly sacrifices himself and even jokes at the end that someone else might have done fucked up. Now on the flip side, let's take Grunt. Everyone's favourite tank-bred, genetically perfect Krogan. Basically a pissed off frog if he met Brock Lesnar at a cliff edge. You have to work really, really hard to form a bond with this crass, very cold-hearted, violence-hungry individual. And then this happens.
Shuttle's down that path. I'll hold them off. Get out of here, Shepard! My turn.
And you can't help but feel a sense of injustice. Your squad are dropping like flies. There's nothing you can do. They keep sacrificing them. Wait, what?
Grunt!
Anybody got something to eat?
And suddenly, everything is right with the world again. And these are not the exceptions. Each character's backstory feels intricate and deliberate. Every character feels like they had a different nuance to the game. Something that brings them out differently to the rest of your companions, and you will find yourself complaining to them, they will complain to you, you will often clash, and you'll find yourself having to side with members that perhaps you didn't think you would at first. And the outcomes of these clashes will depend entirely on your own personal preference, your own sense of diplomacy, and how much of a respect and loyalty you've built up with your teammates over the time that you've spent together. With one pivotal moment in particular proving to be Vermeer with a guy called Rex, who perhaps takes issue with you killing off his entire race by maybe putting a bullet through your head or you through his. Depending on how you handle the situation, you can either kill him, he can kill you, or you can walk away skipping into the sunset together. But perhaps more interestingly, a lot of the characters bring a deeper, more relevant story to the fold and make you confront issues and ideas that perhaps you didn't think you'd have to in a game like this. A number of the characters engage with things such as sexism, racism, cultural bias, the idea of nihilism, our place in the universe and where we fit in. These ideas help add a sense of relevance to the characters because each of their stories confronts these issues and makes you confront them as the player, and it's up to you and only you to use your moral compass to decide how best to tackle them. Which leads us into the final and most important section, the story of the game. The story in of itself is one of the best I've ever played in any game franchise, or indeed ever watched in any television or film series. It'd take around 100 to 200 hours worth to explain it to you, and considering I've already had my fair share of complaints considering my videos are longer than 30 seconds, I'll try to summarise it as best I can in just one sentence. Your story will be defined by you and your choices where it counts, but the ride you go on will grip you from the introduction of the first game right until its final climactic act. The journal that the game provides and narrates for you in each game is an excellent addition, which means that both casual and hardcore players can get enveloped in the universe of Mass Effect with detailed information, everything from individual species to star systems and even the history of this world. This is an excellent addition as it does not interfere with the narrative of the story, the action of the combat, but it is readily accessible to those who are interested in the lore. Suffice it to say, the conclusion of the first game is satisfying as hell, with Shepard being brought to the forefront of galactic politics and taking his place on the stage as the protector of the galaxy. And the second game does an excellent job of bringing this scale down and making it a much more personal mission in the prologue, meaning that the game has a much more focused feel as opposed to getting too caught up in the galactic politics of things. This makes it more of a personal journey for Shepard, but again this is brought in brilliantly because it's a personal journey that takes him again face to face with a threat that he must confront insane odds in order to achieve victory. And at the end of the aforementioned suicide mission that you and your assembled team must face, you are then again left with this feeling of epicness, and yet even in victory there is still more to be done and you salivate at the idea of a next game. I can't praise the game enough for taking the time to again make sure that its endings are as satisfying and as whole as they are, as opposed to completely sequel baiting for the next one. Give us enough so that we want more, rather than telling us that you'll get more in the next one, so be happy with what you got. This game doesn't do that. This game says no to that. And again, that was one of the reasons why I fell in love with the franchise, because you wanted to play that ending over and over again. Even if you knew what was going to happen, you wanted to get there a different way. That was one of the big points that made me think, I should probably play through Mass Effect 2 again. I probably missed something. I'm going to play it again. For a fifth time. And after the two previous games, after the prologue of the third game, the trials, the tribulations, the blood, the sweat and the tears, the game does an immense job of raising the stakes to impossibly ridiculous proportions, while also keeping the story an intensely personal mission for Shepard, by introducing hallucinations and nightmares to the character to play through in the third game, most notably focusing on the young child that's seen in the epilogue, and strange shadows and overarching themes of perhaps indoctrination leading in from the first and second games, and the massive fan theory that was circling on the internet prior to the game's release. It's impossible for me to overemphasize how well the story ramps up the stakes and sells the idea of a galaxy at war with a threat that cannot be defeated. However, we now reach a section which I knew I'd have to confront at some stage, but didn't really want to. A section that breaks my heart, both figuratively and literally. That fucking ending! Fucking hell! Jesus Christ! Sorry, I lost my cool there, but still, it can't be underestimated just how profoundly disappointing this ending was. As a fan, nothing stung like the cold palm, hot face slap to the face that this ending was. The simple fact that this whole game, from the ground up, is built on choice. The idea that you are in control, and that at any point, if you're presented with a scenario, you can equal parts say, okay, you can equal parts say, go fuck yourself, I'm doing it, blam blam, done. I'm Shepard, I do my thing, that's how I roll. I'm a renegade, it's what I can do that because I've taken on everything you've thrown at me so far, told me it's impossible to do, and done it anyway. However, to break it down, that ending boiled down to something like this. And I even have it written down just for good measure so that I can fully encapsulate exactly what the hell happened and why this ending pissed so much of us off. Allow me, if you will, to take you into the game's ending. You're on the brink of death. The galaxy is on the brink of defeat. Your squad mates are either missing or dead. The lights dim. You've fought as hard as you could, but it seems like it wasn't enough. When suddenly, you ascend into the Citadel. There's a bright light. A sense of wonder. Is there yet still another chapter to this epic story? Disoriented and confused, you are greeted by a child of light, an almost omnipotent being. So far, so good, yes? It is at this point that he explains that he is the embodiment of the consciousness of the Reapers themselves, and that the Reapers are the keepers of the cycle of life, who guide sentient beings down lines of technological advancement, then harvest them in order to ensure their continued survival in the galaxy, lest they wipe themselves out through civil war. Now, it's at this point, this jammy little git drops a bomb on your ass. You now get to choose 3 endings. You get to choose your fate. 3 different choices. That's great, right? Choice, that's what we like. Yeah, what colour would you like your ending to be? Green, blue, or orange or red? No one can really tell. I say orange, others say red. That's your choice. What colour it is? You pick your colour. It pans to a really odd shot of your ship, the Normandy, being shot out of the sky by some sort of electrical charge. They crash land on a jungle planet, and credits. Met quickly afterwards by a shot of a planet that's clearly not Earth, but 2 humanoid beings talking about the legend of the Shepherd. And then you're greeted by a screen that says Shepherd is now a legend, and you can continue playing if there's any quests that you use. That's the ending to the most epic, well-written, best presented sci-fi game series I ever played up until that point. Now, of course, the pretense for these endings is slightly more deep than just what colour. You can select blue for control, whereby Shepard will assume control of the Reapers in order to prevent them from wiping out all life in the galaxy. You can select symbiosis, whereby you merge technical and biological beings together to form a new form of life, or you can opt to destroy all technology in the universe, thus eliminating the Reaper threat, but also setting the universe back 15,000 years worth of technological advancement. Those are your choices, but they are never elaborated on. You have to read on the internet that that's what the case was. Now, of course, they've released an update since that elaborates on these endings, but I need you to understand that is what we were presented with when we bought the game new off the shelf. It was immensely, bitterly disappointing. I could rant for ages about these endings, I probably have too much already, but the fact is that none of them make any sense in relation to the story, none of them encapsulate what the Mass Effect story has been about up until that point, and none of them leave you feeling satisfied. Hence why at the end of one playthrough, previous games I played through 2-3 times in order to go through and get fully involved, I put the game down and I didn't play it again for probably 2 years. It would have been different if the game had made you feel something, anything. Defeat, elation, joy, bittersweet tones to it. But you're just feeling confused. What just happened? And that's not the way that the saga should have ended.
This ending was so bittersweet considering all the investment players put into that. I, for one, was left with no inclination to replay them again. And I cannot overemphasize that fact. Bioware released an update with cutaway pictures and epilogues that tried to stem the tide of the fan backlash as mentioned before. But for me, damage had been done. And it also seemed the series would end in the worst way when actually it had already done all the hard work. Ramping up the story, making the characters as believable and as deep as they possibly could while keeping the graphics consistent, if at times looking slightly dated. In short, Mass Effect is still my favourite RPG series from start to car crash of a finish. It still captured everything that I ever wanted in a game, whereby you're made to feel important. You do what you want, when you want, a story guides you, makes you feel like you have a general sense of direction, but more to the point is just fun. An encapsulating and engrossing experience. And with the additional content that they released, showing that they do care about the fans, at least to the extent that if they shout loud enough they get an answer, and with the release of the upcoming Andromeda trailer for the next game, which does promise, you know, improved graphics, additional gameplay options, but more to the point, takes the bold step of appearing after this series, thereby having to explain what happened afterwards. I can only hope that the franchise can pick itself up, dust itself off, and come at it from a brand new, fresh perspective, and learn from the lessons of the past. Make the game more rounded in terms of its combat and more interesting with more things to do in its world, but don't lose that sense of storytelling, because throughout the franchise, I can't criticise its ability to tell a well-rounded and immensely detailed story. And who knows, they may yet revive the Mass Effect legacy that left off after the third game. So, if you had a slow week coming up, you've never played these games before, I would highly recommend picking up all three. They're very well designed, extremely fun to play, you'll lose yourself in the environments, and more to the point, you'll leave feeling satisfied at least 2 out of 3 times. Just make sure that you have a healthy supply of controllers after that third game, and an innocent bystander or a close friend that you can yell obscenity at until the ending makes sense. And that was this week's episode. Thank you so much for watching. There'll be a prologue section in a moment, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to address the fact that my last 2 shows ended somewhat like. In any event, thank you so much for watching. Please enjoy the prologue. Or epilogue. I forget. Epilogue. Sorry. Epilogue. Watch it now. Hello, and thank you so much for watching this episode of Halcyon this week. I hope it was, well, I haven't seen the final edit yet, but I'm only going to assume it's like 4-5 days long. I know a lot of people have been saying the videos are long, but I know that by the same token, these videos aren't targeted to you as an audience, so I apologise for that. However, big news. Next week onwards, I'm going to be filming a new show called Blink. Going to be a lot shorter. Different type of content, still review based, but I hope people will enjoy it. In the meantime, at least, I hope you check out the original review, as crappy as that one was. Still give me some tips and advice, although I think that these shows have improved since. Check out the new and improved Halcyon at episode 2 with the FIFA retrospective, and also check out a couple of the podcasts. They're starting to become more diverse. Wrestling Talk with Brenny is going to be a weekly thing. Hopefully we're going to get some more people in at some stage. Ryan might be making a return on the next review. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, thank you so much again for watching. For those that have subscribed and those that have commented, I love you crazy people. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care.